Good morning, everyone. Welcome back.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. You are, I think, not there in the previous class. You are very silent, quiet. I could not hear you last class.
Sir, I was in travel. That's what when I opened the mic, it will be disturbance. So I kept quiet.
Because otherwise, Swaminathan is very vibrant during the class. But last class, Swaminathan was very quiet. Okay.
Yes, sir. That's the reason. Thank
That's
you.
fine. That's fine. It's good. I like people who are active, vibrant, so that it gives me also that vibrance to make the class more interactive, to take you all deeper into the concepts. Great. So yes, students, tell me any questions, any doubts that are left unanswered so that I can first take up that. And then I will start with my further deliberation. Anybody has any queries relating to the pointers that we discussed in the previous class? Or anything up to the previous class, I should say. Yes. Anything from your side, students? Queries, questions, clarifications? No? Everybody's through everything in place of supply? If that be the case, then let me take you to the next part in the same chapter, and then we will proceed with our further discussions, deliberations in this topic. Yes, so very good morning to all present here. So let us start. Now, in the previous classes, we discussed the provisions relating to determining place of supply for goods, for services, for international transactions, domestic transactions. Now, what is the purpose? What is the need of determining place of supply? So, one, place of supply is determined to fix or find out the nature of transaction. So depending upon place of supply, we come to know whether our transaction is interstate, intrastate, and the nature of tax that would be levied. Second, the second purpose of place of supply is finding out which state government would be getting the revenue of the S portion in the transaction. And third is finding out the eligibility of the ITC. So place of supply provisions affect broadly these three things in GST. Now, since one of the major reasons of place of supply is to determine the nature of transactions, we all know nature of transactions are of two types, interstate, intrastate. But today we are going to define, rather we are going to dissect what is the nature of transaction definition in the law. Again, these definitions are given in the IGST Act. So the sections that we are going to study today would be from the IGST Act again, same like POS. So who would help me reading? Somebody who has not yet read. I think last time Yogesh had read. Swaminathan reads every time. If anybody else would like to take the lead today in reading the provisions for everyone. Yes? No? Then Swaminathan, would you like to read today?
Yes, sir.
Please.
Section 7, Interstate Supply. Subsection 1. Subject to the provision of Section 10, Supply of goods, where the location of the supplier and the place of supply are in two different states, two different union territories or a state and union territory shall be treated as supply of goods in the course of interstate trade or commerce.
Okay. So now they are defining what would be an interstate supply, what would be intrastate supply. I'll just take you also to the definition of intrastate supply, just for bringing out a very interesting point. Just read this subsection 1 also. Swaminathan,
Yes, sir.
just read this subsection also, subsection 1.
Okay. Subject to the provision of section 10, supply of goods where the location of the supplier and the place of supply of goods are in the same state or same union territory shall be treated as a intrastate supply.
So if you read parallel both the provisions have first thing in common, that when they are talking about the place of supply, what they are saying, subject to provisions of section 10. Why? Because we all studied that section 10 provides the place of supply for transactions relating to goods within the country. So first part is subject to provisions of section 10, means before you come to this section, which is sequence wise earlier than section 10. So 7 and 8 comes prior to section 10 chronologically. However, they are saying before you read this, you first go and check what is the place of supply. So you first find out the place of supply, because basis the place of supply, you will determine the nature of transaction, because place of supply is the determinant for whether the transaction will be interstate supply or intrastate supply. So both the provision starts with this precursor saying that subject to provisions of section 10, which means you'll first determine the provisions of section 10, and then it says, like here we are studying intrastate supply, so it says supply of goods service where location of supplier, place of supplier in the same state, and above it was saying it is in different states or different union territories or one state and one union territory. Now what is interesting is when they are talking about intrastate, they are saying that when both things would be in the same state, it shall be treated as intrastate supply, correct? Whereas when we read this definition, what it says, subject to provisions of 10, where the location of supplier and place of supplier, different states, different territories, or a state and a territory, it shall be treated as supply of goods. Now see the difference in the language. Here it is saying this transaction where this will happen shall be treated as supply of goods in the course of interstate trade or commerce. And here it was saying when this will happen, it shall be treated as intrastate supply. Can you find some difference? I'll do one thing. I'll open this twice, so I need not.
There should be a trade of commerce for the interstate supply.
So that is the point. So when you read interstate supply definition, it says that the supply of goods where they are in different places shall be treated as supply of goods in the course of interstate trade or commerce. Whereas for intrastate, they are saying the supply of goods where they are in the same state shall be treated as an intrastate supply. Now, see, it is not that there should be trade or commerce, because trade or commerce has to be present in both, because trade or commerce is the business element. If the business is not there, then anyways it will not be a supply, because it will not satisfy the definition of supply. It is not about being present. It is not about the presence of trade or commerce. It is about this phrase. What is the phrase? The phrase is in the course of. What I want to draw your attention to is when you read intrastate, it simply says the supply of goods shall be treated as intrastate supply. And when you read interstate, it says the supply of goods in the course of interstate trade or commerce. So the treatment is slightly different because of this phrase. It is not about trade or commerce. Trade or commerce we can keep aside for the time being. So you can simply read as interstate supply. So see the difference. The difference is this phrase which I have highlighted. So I'm again switching to the other provision. See, here it says, this transaction, the transaction shall be treated as intrastate supply. So read the language. The transaction shall be treated as intrastate supply. Whereas here it says, this transaction of supply of goods shall be treated as supply in the course of interstate trade or commerce. Could they not use the same sentence here? Shall be treated as interstate supply? Yes. They could have very well used the same terminology. It means it is not, see, many times what happens when you are writing a sentence, when you're writing a provision, for the purpose of correct grammar, you have to change the active voice, passive voice, or something. That is a different thing. But here, I could have very well said, shall be treated as interstate supply. So it would have been grammatically correct. But they have not done that. It means this is not for grammar. There is some reason for this, where it says, this transaction shall be treated as supply in the course of interstate trade or commerce. It will not be an interstate supply. It will be supply in the course of interstate trade. See, you'll find the same thing below here also. You'll find the same thing here also. So in the entire definition, they have maintained this, that the supply would be in the course of interstate trade commerce. Whereas for intrastate, it would be straightforward intrastate supply. Now my question is there some different meaning to this? Or it is again just maybe as a matter of plain policy or matter of plain grammar usage that they have thought that this will look much better and it will not sound monotonous.
Sir, I feel that in the intrastate sale supply, so anyway the place of supply and other things it will be within that, which means when they are providing supply within that, the place
Okay.
of location of supply and place of supply will be same in many of the cases. In some of the cases, if the delivery is given in the different state or different places, then the question will arise.
But see, delivery point, I think, is limited only for goods. Then for
Yeah,
services, they should have said simply interstate supply, but they are using the same terminology for service. Correct, na?
I'm thinking in that line. That's it.
Nee, I'm giving you a different perspective, na?
Yeah,
If
yeah,
that be
correct.
the case, they should not have used the same terminology in service, because for service there is no such challenge, na?
Mm.
So, acha, firstly, let us interpret it like this. Now, see, this is, since we are at final, I'm not interested in plain reading of the sections. In fact, the whole section, both 7 and 8 are very pretty much straightforward. It is, and we all know that right from our childhood. Childhood means from the time you started studying GST, that when both things are in same state, it will be intra. If one is outside, means they are in different states, it will be inter. So that is so plain. I'm not interested in reading the same section that you can read by yourself and understand very pretty easily. What I want to highlight is there is some logic, there is some interpretational aspect hidden when the law uses this term or this type of a language. So let us first try to find out the grammatical or the English meaning of this phrase, in the course of. So what is in the course of? Yes, you all can Google. If you want, I will Google for you and you can see on the screen. So what is this in the course of? Correct? Undergoing the specified process. This is not relevant. This is relevant. During the specified activity. Now, this is what is of relevance to us. Let's see what Cambridge Dictionary has to offer if there is something different. So in the course of something, like here it is in the course of interstate trade or commerce. So during an event or period of time, while doing a particular activity. Are you getting this? So here again, they are giving two meanings, during an event or period of time. But I think more specific to us is while doing a particular activity. Let us see the examples given. Your job description outlines the main duties that you will be carrying out in the course of your work, that is while doing your work. Similarly, in the course of writing this essay, I was tempted many times to veer off the subject, that is while writing the essay. While doing this activity of writing the essay, I was tempted many times to get off the subject. Now, if you read it like this, it means what is the definition that the lawmakers are trying to project is that this supply, when the above condition will be satisfied, the supply is not interstate supply. Understand the difference. It is the supply is the transaction is not interstate full stop. It will be considered as a supply in the course of interstate trade. That is, while doing interstate trade, it is considered as a supply. Now you'll ask, sir, what it is. See, when we add this phrase in the course of, we lengthen the thing. We make it a process. Had I said, like in the case of intrastate definition, that this transaction is intrastate supply, it means I am pinpointed talking that this transaction intrastate supply, full stop. But when I say it will be treated as a supply in the course of interstate trade, it means that transaction pinpointed may not be interstate supply, but the transaction is to be considered as part of interstate trade or commerce. Now we'll say, sir, okay, what difference it makes? It makes a huge difference. The difference is when I say this transaction is intrastate supply, full stop. But when I say this transaction is in the course of interstate trade, it means we are making that transaction part of multiple other transactions which will happen while you are doing interstate trade, which means one more very important thing. See, how should I explain? I'll tell you the genesis of this. This thing you will find right from Constitution. This phrase has been used whenever the word interstate has been used. So understand the genesis. See, originally we had state laws. Now, when we had state laws, let us say I am in Maharashtra, let us say you are in Tamil Nadu, let us say somebody is in Rajasthan, somebody is in Bengal. So if I am doing a transaction within Maharashtra, no other state should have any concern with that transaction. So they said, boss, a transaction in Maharashtra is Maharashtra's transaction, full stop. But when the transaction started crossing the boundaries of a state, there was the transaction which happened between states. So let us say I am doing a transaction with a person sitting in West Bengal. Now let us talk about transaction of goods to understand this point. My goods would be starting from Mumbai, which is one corner, which is the west corner of India, and reaching a place in West Bengal, which is the east corner of India. Now, when I am doing this transaction, the transaction may be crossing different states. The goods are physically moving through different states. And the most important point is, I do not want this transaction to become multiple transactions. Like when my goods cross Maharashtra and they enter MP, it should not become a separate transaction. Then let us say from MP, they enter Delhi, and then from Delhi to UP, and let us say connecting, they finally reach Bengal. I do not want these transactions to become multiple transactions, because originally there was understanding only between two parties, between me and you. I am in Maharashtra, you are in Bengal. I just want that this should be one single transaction. So, how they have coined this phrase right from the constitution part, when this particular concept came into constitution somewhere, if I'm not wrong, around 1956, when the Central Sales Tax Act was first brought in because of lot many disputes between the states for interstate transactions. Though they purposefully thought of using this particular terminology, that the sale would be in the course of interstate trade. At that time it was sale, now it is supply. So they want to say that maybe it could be a string of transactions, maybe it could be a string of different activities, but that entire string should be considered as one transaction. Hence, they have said that this supply, now it is supply, earlier it was sale, would be considered as supply in the course of interstate. So there could be multiple strings of transactions attached, but we want to treat it as one transaction nature, that is interstate. Now, how it impacts, that I'll tell you as we proceed with some other provisions. So just keep in mind for the time being, intrastate supply is one stop, one event transaction. Interstate supplies are considered to be part of the whole series of the transaction that is happening. Just keep this in mind. I'll explain how this impacts when it comes to GST law. So we are discussing the definitions. So section 7 defines interstate supply. It is very simple. When it is talking about goods, it simply says two different territories, one location of supply, one place of supply. It would be interstate supply. So I'm just using the simplified terminology interstate supply, whereas the law uses supply in the course of interstate trade. Correct? Yes, Swaminathan. Please go through other subsections.
Yes, sir. Subsection 2, supply of goods imported into the territory of India till they cross the custom frontier of India shall be treated to be a supply of goods in the course of interstate trade or commerce.
Now, here I will explain you what is the impact of this phrase. Now we are talking about an inter-country transaction. And we all know inter-country transaction will by default be interstate transaction. Now what they are saying, wherever there is supply of goods, which is imported into the territory of India. So what is the supply? The supply is in the form of import, where goods are coming into the territory of India. Now, interestingly, understand this point. We will discuss this again in detail when we go to the customs part and the customs charging section. So what is the territory of India? Territory of India is not the land portion of India only. Territory of India starts from water. So once a ship enters our, or let us say it is in the international waters, there is a point, there is a line in the, there is a boundary in the sea, which is the boundaries from our land portion. It is 12 nautical miles into the sea. That is actually the boundary of India. So the moment the ship enters, it is still in the sea, but the moment it enters or it crosses this 12 nautical miles line, technically it is in Indian territory. That is what we call as Indian waters. Many times in movies also you'll find relevance of this, that whether you are in Indian waters or you are in international waters. So there is a line, you can just visualize or imagine there is a boundary made in the water. That boundary line is from our land portion, it is 12 nautical miles into the sea, that boundary is drawn. So 12 nautical miles from our landmass into the sea is that imaginary boundary line. Now, the moment the ship comes into India, technically import has happened. But again, the meaning of this import cannot conclude at that point because the goods are yet to reach the final destination. But if you see the definition of import, even in GST law, which is taken from customs law, import is defined simply to mean entering into India. Like here also, it is using the word supply of goods imported into the territory of India. So the moment you enter into India, import has happened. But technically, it is not complete. The process of import has started. So the moment goods enter the 12 nautical mile line, the import has started. Then maybe it will reach our land portion. Or on reaching land, that is on reaching the port, the ship will unload the goods. Still, import is happening. The goods will go in the custody of customs authority at the port trust. The port trust authorities, but is considered to be under the control of customs. You will reach out to customs and you will pay the customs duty, make the application for getting the goods, which is called as bill of entry. The customs will process it. If they find everything is in proper and if you have paid the proper customs duty, they will hand over the goods to you. Import will end. Now, this whole passage of time between the goods entering the 12 nautical mile line, that is once the goods enter the territory of India, till you actually get the goods from customs permanently, finally, that is thereafter there is no control of customs. This is in the course of import. Now, what is interesting to note is if in between this period, let us say I imported goods, and between this period, that is before finally the goods are taken permanently from customs, I sold it to Yogesh. Yogesh further sold it to Swaminathan, and further these goods are sold by Swaminathan to, let us say, Saurabh. In this whole transaction, this every leg of transaction will also be considered as import. This is the interesting part. Though now the further second and third transaction are happening in India, but for the purpose of taxation, they would be still considered as import because they're happening between this whole patch, which is the meaning of in the course of import. And once anything is in the course of import, by default, it will be in the course of interstate trade. So this is what is the meaning or the effect of this particular transaction, that let us say the transaction is starting from Maharashtra to Bengal, my original example. If in between there is some other transaction which are happening, they may appear to happen in one state only, but if it is happening in this whole phase, we will consider those transactions also as interstate and not intrastate. That is what is the meaning of this phrase in the course. So this is what is the impact, and it is coming from constitution. It has relevance in customs law. It had relevance in the sales tax law, and now it is having relevance in the GST law again. So this is something very interesting. You'll realize the relevance of this when you read some other provisions also. That time, there will be no confusion once you have understood what is this meaning. So in this patch, while doing this whole thing, if any transaction is happening, that would be considered to be in the course of that whole transaction, which is here interstate supply. Fine. Now, both these subsections 1 and 2 were dealing with transaction of goods. So subsection 1 said when the goods is a transaction between two states, it will be interstate. Similarly, subsection 2 said whenever it is import, it will be interstate. Now, interesting to notice, they have only considered import, supply of goods imported into the territory of India. And even if you go down, nowhere they have referred to exports except this point. So interesting to notice here they have covered import specifically, but they have not covered export over here. This is also to be observed. Why? What difference it makes will come when we proceed further, but just keep this also at the back of your mind. They could have simply said supply of goods imported into territory of India or exported out of territory of India. shall be in the course of interstate. But they have chosen not to include exports here. Why? We will see. Go ahead, Swaminathan. Subsection 3 and 4.
Yeah, subsection 3 of section 7. Subject to the provision of section 12, supply of service where the location of supplier and the place of supply are in two different states, two different union territories, or a state and a union territory shall be treated as supply of service in the course of interstate trade or commerce.
Go ahead. It is a replica of subsection 1 for goods.
Okay. Then subsection 4. Supply of service imported into the territory of India shall be treated to be a supply of service in the course of interstate trade or commerce.
Now, both these subsections which deals with service transactions are, you can say, replica from the first two subsections relating to goods transaction. So subsection 3 says that whenever the transaction is within India, that is, it is part of section 12, and location of supplier, place of supplier in different states, different union territories, it will be interstate. And similarly, whenever services are imported into India, now you have to go to the definition of import, which is given, which you remember we had discussed last time also. It has not four. Import has three conditions: supplier outside, recipient inside, and place of supply should fall in India as per section 30. So in case of import, wherever there is a transaction of import, that is all these three conditions are satisfied, it will also be considered to be interstate transaction. Now comes the most important part, according to me, that is subsection 5. Please read.
Supply of goods or services or both. When the supplier is located in India and the place of supply is outside India, to or by a special economic zone developer or a special economic zone unit, or in the taxable territory not being on intrastate supply and not covered elsewhere in this section, shall be treated to be a supply of goods or service or both in the course of interstate trade or commerce.
So now here comes the export part, but interestingly, they have not used the terminology export. Like how they use the terminology import of goods, import of service, they have not used the same terminology, though you have the definition of export of goods and export of service in the GST law. But they have not used that terminology. Why? Because if you remember, for any transaction to be treated as export of service, there are 5 requirements: supplier in India, recipient outside, place of supply outside, transaction in foreign currency, and the outside person should not be my counterpart, my own branch. Now, when all these 5 conditions are fulfilled, then only that transaction would be qualified as export of service. If any one is missing, it will not be considered as export. But where the supplier is inside and the place of supply is outside, though this may appear to be export in the common parlance, but as I just explained, further conditions have to be satisfied. Now, if any of those conditions are not satisfied, we will not call it as export, but still it will remain interstate supply. So wherever the place of supply is falling outside India, the transaction will become an interstate transaction, irrespective of whether or not the transaction becomes export. So this is where the differentiation is drawn, that maybe for becoming export, there could be more conditions. So we are keeping that part aside. But in case of import of service and goods, they have said that when the transaction is import, it means the conditions of import are satisfied, it will be interstate. But for export, they have not said that it should be export. So any transaction where place of supply is outside India and the location of supplier is in India, whether or not export, it shall be treated as interstate. Then transactions to or by special economic zone. So even though the special economic zone may be in your own state, but when you are sending or selling to SEZ or SEZ is selling to you, SEZ is always considered as a foreign territory, even though it is lying exactly next to your industry. So you have your industry, and just next to that, there is another industrial zone or area which has been demarcated as SEZ. The transaction between these two territories, though both are part of the same state, will be considered as an interstate supply or in the course of interstate supply. And then this is the most uh, crucial point, I will say. Why crucial? Because it is the residuary section. And the residuary section says wherever the supply of goods or service is happening in India, taxable territories means India, and it is not covered in the intrastate supply definition and also not covered above. So in short, this is the residuary entry. So if there is any transaction which is covered nowhere, neither in the intrastate definition or neither in this entire definition or section, it shall, by residuary rule, be treated as an interstate supply only. So the point is that they have tried to make out that the residuary transactions which are not treated as intrastate will by default become interstate supply. So this is what is the definition relating to interstate. Let us go to the next definition, that is relating to intrastate. So subsection 1 is saying that where both the location of supplier, place of supply are in India, it should be, are in the same state, it should be treated as an intrastate. However, there are exceptions. And where these exceptions are coming from, they are coming from the above section, which was defining interstate supply. So please read, Swaminathan.
Yes, sir. Provided that the following supply of goods not to be treated as intrastate supply, namely supply of goods to or by special economic zone developer or a special economic zone unit, goods imported into the territory of India till they cross the custom frontier of India, or
This is the
supplies.
important point. So as I was mentioning, this entire phase will always be considered as interstate only, though it may be happening in the same state, in the same place. Go ahead.
Supplies made to the tourist referred to in section 15.
Now, what is
Subsection.
section 15? Section 15 is when a foreign tourist comes to your shop and buys goods. Even though he is buying goods from your shop, the transaction with a foreign tourist will always be considered as an interstate supply. So that is why it has been put as an exception, because the transaction is happening within the same state, within the same place. But we want to treat it as an interstate supply. Correct? Yes, go ahead.
Subsection 2. Subject to the provision of section 12, supply of service where the location of the supplier and the place of supply of services are in the same state or same union territory shall be treated as intrastate supply, provided that the intrastate supply of service shall not include supply of service to or by special economic zone developer or a special economic zone unit.
So why again this exception? Because of the above point, that once it is by or to SEZ, it will always be considered as interstate. So same point, all supplies of service where location of suppliers, place of supplies in the same state should be intrastate. However, if it is with SEZ, it will not be intrastate, it will become interstate. Yes, go ahead.
Explanation 1. For the purposes of this act, where a person has an establishment in India and any other establishment outside India, an establishment in a state or union territory, and any other establishment outside that state or union territory, or an establishment in a state or union territory and any other establishment registered within that state or union territory, then such establishment shall be treated as establishments of distinct persons.
Perfect. So what this particular explanation is trying to say is, so you are same person, correct? But if you have two offices, one in this state, another in the another state, then those two offices will be considered as establishment of different persons, it means the transaction between them should be treated as a different transaction. So this is flowing from the definition of distinct person only. The only difference is when you talk about distinct person, the distinct person is the one who is registered. Now here you are not registered because that is your fixed establishment in some other place, and we all know in in case of definition of fixed establishment, there may not be a definition. There may not be a registration. So your fixed establishment is not registered. Correct. Still, it will be considered as a transaction between two different persons because these establishments shall be treated as establishments of different persons. That is what is the point they have tried to make out. Right? Read the other explanation.
Explanation 2. A person carrying on a business through a branch or an agency or a representational office in any territory shall be treated as having an establishment in that territory.
Now, this is supplementing the above explanation. So above explanation was talking about establishment in a state, establishment in a union territory. Now, what will be an establishment? A person carrying on business through a branch or agency. So even your branch or your agency or any of your representational office. What is representational office? You have, like in case of chartered accountants, it happens that I may not set up my own office in every place, but I may tie up with a CA saying that all my communications will happen through you. So you become my representational office. So even that will be considered as my establishment. This is what it means. Correct. So these are some explanatory points relating to this particular definition. So this is the definition of intrastate. Now we have another interesting definition. Now this is dealing with a very special scenario where the supplies or the transactions are happening in territorial waters. Now what is this territorial waters? From the land portion of India, I said our boundary is up to 12 nautical miles in the sea. This part from land up to 12 nautical miles in the sea will be treated as your territorial waters. Now the question is, if the transaction is happening in the territorial waters, now we'll say, sir, what are the examples? So you already know that we have some units or some, what should I say, entity which are established in the waters, like our ONGC plant. It is established in the waters because over there they are extracting the crude oil from the seabed. Now these entities which are in the waters, if any transaction is happening with these entities, now how will you define that supply, whether interstate, intrastate? Because the point is, we were defining the supplies as interstate, intrastate, depending upon one is location of supplier should be in one state, place of supply should be in another state or same state. But when something is in water, where or which state it will belong to, that is what this particular point is trying to clarify. So read this point, we'll get to know that when there is a transaction which is happening in the waters, it will be considered as part of which state. Go ahead.
Section 9. Supplies in territorial water, notwithstanding anything contained in this act. A. Where a location of supplier is in the territorial waters, the location of such suppliers, or where the place of supply is in the territorial waters, the place of supply shall, for the purpose of this act, be deemed to be in the coastal state or union territory where the nearest point of the appropriate baseline is located.
So how they are going to classify such transactions? So either where the supplier is in the territorial waters or the place of supply falls in territorial waters. Then you will mark that location in the territorial waters and try to geographically find out it is closest to which coastal state. So let us say we have ONGC plant in the waters. Now when this ONGC plant is situated in the waters, you will try to find out it is closest to Maharashtra border or closest to Gujarat border. Whichever waters it is closest to, or whichever coastline we use the word, it is closest to, that state will be considered to be the state for that undertaking. So even though the undertaking is floating in the waters, but the state which is closest to that undertaking which is floating in the waters will be considered as the state of that particular water body or that undertaking which is in the waters. That is what is this section 9. Correct? So with this, we complete this topic of POS. Now we can go to our next topic, that is of exemption. Now, I'm sure by now, since you all have studied taxation at Inters, both income tax and the indirect tax, whatever you studied at that time, it may be GST, or as many of you all have done Inters very early or long back. So you may have studied excise, service tax. And today, when we are studying at finals, again, direct tax, that is income tax, and also GST. This one thing is common in all taxation laws. Rather, this is something unique to taxation laws. That is what is exemptions. What are exemptions? So basically, exemptions are those transactions which fall in the levy. That is, if you see the charging section of income tax, section 4, or if you see the charging section of GST, section 9 of the CGST, SGST Act, section 5 of the IGST Act, your transaction is falling in this charging section. It means it is chargeable to tax, both, or maybe whatever, income tax, GST, whatever. So it is called that such transactions are taxable transactions, or these transactions are leviable to tax. However, out of these transactions, for some transactions, the lawmaker do not want to collect tax. So tax is levied, but they do not want to collect this tax. And generally the reason is it is in the public interest that they do not want to collect tax. Hence, for the time being, that transaction is made exempt. So when we say exempt from tax means what? The collection of tax on those transactions for the time being has been stopped. Now, a very interesting part to observe and note is if you see Income Tax Act, the exemptions are part of the act itself. So we have section 10 in the Income Tax Act giving the exemption list. However, when you see indirect taxes, like if you remember earlier service tax or earlier excise and even today's GST, the exemptions are not part of the act. The exemptions are by way of a notification. There is a notification which gives the list of the transactions which would be exempt from tax. Now, interesting part is there a difference if the exemption is given in the act or if the exemption is given by notification? Students.
If it is in act, it has to be passed to parliament. If they want to change anything, they have to pass through the parliament and everything for the
Okay.
act. And for notification, they don't have to do so much things. They can simply pass one notification and they can change it.
Okay. So you mean to say that whenever something is by way of notification, the power is with the executive government, correct?
Yes, sir.
So firstly, let us understand this difference. There is one, that is your parliament, your legislature, and the other is there is your executive government. So parliament is what we are seeing, that there is a parliament session, things are what you said decided in the parliament, bills are passed there. That is what the parliament does. Whereas when it comes to something which is by way of notification, as rightly pointed out, in case of notification, the power rests with the executive government. So it can be done only by the executive action. It does not requires any approval, anything from the parliament. That is where the difference is. Now the question is why it is that In case of income tax, there is exemption given by the parliament because it is part of the act. And in case of indirect tax, and it is for all indirect taxes, not only one. You see customs, you see service tax, excise, and even GST. Why it is that the exemptions are given by the government? Why they have made this differentiation?
Income tax, anyhow, it is collected annually.
Okay,
So Parliament session, it happens annually. Uh, Around in February, they can pass it and they can change it. But
okay,
GST, it is daily on transaction basis. So if they have to make any changes, they have to wait till the Parliament session is happening and very long
hmm,
time process. That's why.
great, perfect. So, as we all saw, as we all just heard, that in case of indirect taxes, it is a transaction tax, be it service tax or customs, and the transaction is happening day in, day out. Now, it may happen that some transaction is happening which requires immediate response, and at that time, the parliament may not be in motion. Even if, let us say, the parliament is in motion, there is a process. You have to first introduce it as a bill. Before introducing the bill, you have to give the information to every party that this bill will be introduced. And then there would be discussion, there would be Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, President. This may consume a lot of time. And if it is important in the public interest to do, it is also many times important to take the action in time. Otherwise, if you're taking the action after 2, 3 months, maybe there would be some damage done, or there could be some uh, unnecessary burden on the society. So to avoid that, certain powers which requires immediate attention are delegated by the legislature to the executive government. So it is not that government is having an automatic power of giving exemption. No, because if tax is leviable by the parliament, that is by making an act, then everything relating to the tax, be it procedures, be it exemption, everything will be done by the parliament only. But as you see, we also have rules. And again, who is making the rules? The government is making the rules. So even whatever is part of the rules has been delegated by the legislature to the executive government, because again, rules are dealing with what they are dealing with day-to-day procedural compliances. They deal with the forms, they deal with the timelines. So that the act does not want to fit or keep itself occupied into the legislature. So for such procedural things, they give or they delegate the power to the government to decide the rules. Similarly, in case of indirect taxes, the act delegates the power to exempt to the government. So now the government has to decide what things would be exempt. Now there is small difference when it comes to GST. In GST, whether it is act made by or passed by the parliament, or it is the rules or notifications which are given by the government, both things are coming firstly from the council recommendation. So GST law is so designed that only the power to pass the act or to make the rules and notification is given to different bodies. One is legislature, one is the executive government. However, both these things has to come from the council in the form of recommendations after the council meeting. Only after the council votes and finalizes something, then only these two bodies will be able to exercise their power. So this is an interesting point when it comes to GST, which is absent in all other laws, be it direct or indirect taxes. GST has this special feature that everything will first be decided, will first be voted and finalized by the council. So just keeping this backdrop in mind, we start with our exemption. Now, exemptions could be given in different manner. Now, this is interesting to note that what are the different ways of giving exemption? Yes, Swaminathan.
A exemption to specified activities or transaction. Sometimes exemption is provided in respect of specified activities or transactions. Consequently, the status of the supplier or recipient of the activities transaction become immaterial.
So what is the first type of exemption? Exemption is transaction specific. That is, this transaction is exempt. Who does it? Who receives it is immaterial. So first type of exemption is transaction specific exemption. Second,
Exemption to specified suppliers. At times, exemption is given to specified suppliers only. Here, the status of recipient of the activities or transaction become immaterial.
okay. So then the second type of transaction is or exemption is supplier specific. Like in case of trust, we say that where trust will do something, it will be exempt. The same transaction done by anybody else will not be exempt. So here I am basing this entire exemption on the basis who is the supplier. Similarly, the third category is recipient specific, where I say that only when the receiver is government, the transaction would be exempt. Only when the receiver is, let us say, a person in a specific area, the transaction would be exempt. So the third type of exemption is recipient specific, and there could be some exemption which will require both things to be specified. Who is the supplier plus who is the recipient. So there could be some transactions where both things are important, the supplier also, the recipient also. So these are the different ways or types of exemptions: transaction specific, supplier specific, recipient specific, or both supplier and recipient specific. Now, now we come to the main part. As we are discussing that the power to give exemption is with the parliament only. But since they want that this should be done by executive government, there has to be a section in the law which delegates the power. So this section is section 11 of the CNS and section 6 of the IGST. Now there are some very important pointers that is to be understood from this, because this is the only section we are going to study in this chapter. After that, we are going to discuss the entire notification. Okay, can you please read?
Yeah, subsection 1 of section 11, power to grant exemption from tax. Where the government is satisfied that it is necessary in the public interest, so to do, it may, on the recommendations of the council by notification, exempt generally, either absolutely or subject to such conditions as may be specified therein, goods or services or both of any specified description from the whole or any part of the tax leviable thereon, with effect from such date as may be specified in the notification.
Go to the next point also.
Subsection 2, where the government is satisfied that it is necessary in the public interest, so to do, it may, on the recommendation of the council by special order in each case, under circumstances of an exceptional nature to be stated in such order, exempt from payment of tax any goods or services or both on which tax is leviable.
So now these are the two main subsections: giving power to the government, delegating the power to the government. Again, one thing is common: on the recommendation of council, but now it is passing on the power to the government to take this decision as to for what it wants to give the exemption of any of the above four types. Now, what is the difference between subsection 1 and 2? Subsection 1 is giving the power to give general exemption, whereas subsection 2 is giving the power to give specific case-wise exemption. Now, firstly, what is the difference between a general exemption and a specific exemption? The general exemption is an exemption which will be applicable to anyone, whoever satisfies the condition of that exemption entry. Whereas specific exemption is an exemption either applicable to one person, one body, or it is applicable to only one type of transaction happening at this point of time. Maybe the same transaction after some point of time may not be exempt. So let us say during COVID, they may bring a limited exemption for that much period of COVID, but they do not want this to continue thereafter. So let us say, for example, they may exempt medicines, they may exempt health insurance. So these things may be done. So that is what is a specific exemption. And generally, which they want to keep it for a long period of time. Okay, in future, they may amend it, they may remove it, but for the time being, they want it to be there generally. Now, between the two, the difference is that since general exemption is going to be there always, since it is for everybody in common, that is why it is brought by way of a notification. Whereas since a special exemption will be very specific, very limited to a person or to a time, hence it has to be brought in by a special order. First thing. Second thing is this part. What it says, either absolutely or subject to conditions. So further the exemptions can be two: absolute exemption or conditional exemption. Conditional exemption is the exemption which puts certain conditions that you do this, you do this, you do this, then you take exemption. That is conditional. And general exemption is, ki boss, you are a trust, khatam. What you will do is exempt. You are a medical body, what you will do is exempt. So that is what is an absolute exemption. Now, what is an important difference between an absolute and a conditional exemption is that if it is an absolute exemption, it is compulsory. You cannot say, I will not take the exemption, I will pay the tax. So absolute exemptions are also compulsory exemptions, whereas the conditional exemptions are optional exemptions. It is in fact very simple that if you don't want, you simply do not satisfy the condition or you breach one of the conditions, automatically you are out of the exemption. So by nature, conditional exemptions are optional, but absolute are compulsory. You do not have a choice where the notification or the exemption is made absolute, right? Now, a very interesting point common to both general exemptions also and special exemptions also is subsection 3. Please read.
The government may, if it considers necessary or expedient, so to do for the purpose of clarifying the scope or applicability of any notifications issued under subsection 1 or order issued under subsection 2, insert on explanation in such notification or order, as the case may be, by notification at any time within 1 year of issue of the notification under subsection 1 or order under subsection 2, or and every such explanation shall have effect as if it had always been the part of the first such notification or order, as the case may be.
Okay. Now, what is this particular point dealing about? This point is dealing about the applicability of any type of clarification, any type of explanation which is added later on in the original notification or order. So originally there was an exemption notification. Now notification when it is general, order when it is special. So originally there was an exemption notification, let us say giving exemption to agriculture activities. Now, after this notification was brought in, there was a lot of confusion between different stakeholders, and they were continuously approaching the government, the council for their clarity. Let us say, if I am into plantation or running a nursery, whether nursery activity will also be considered as agriculture and hence exempt. So for this, lot of confusion was there. Some were saying nursery is agriculture, some were saying nursery is not agriculture. So people approached, let us say, the government for clarification. And government also felt that, okay, we brought this exemption, but it is creating a lot of confusion. Let me clarify. Now, in this particular case, where the government gives a clarification that yes, this is also agriculture. Let us say this is the clarification given. Normally, how they give a clarification, they add some explanation, something like this, which clarifies that, okay, this is included or this is not included. Now, when they add this explanation, and it was not originally part of the notification, it is added later on. A very big question is that from which date it will be applicable, retrospectively from the original date when the notification or the entry was brought in, or later on when this explanation is added. For this purpose, the Act itself clarifies that if this explanation, which clarifies what will be covered or not covered in that particular exemption, is brought within 1 year of the original notification or original entry, then this explanation, even though added, let us say after 8 months, 10 months, 11 months, will be having a retrospective effect. But if this explanation is brought after 1 year, then it will have a prospective effect. This is what is explained or given by subsection 3. Go ahead.
Explanation. For the purpose of this section, where an exemption in respect of any goods or services or both from the whole or part of the tax leviable thereon has been granted absolutely, the registered person supplying such goods or service or both shall not collect the tax in excess of the effective rate on such supply of goods or services or both.
So this is what is the point I was explaining earlier, that if it is an absolute exemption, you have to compulsorily avail. You cannot miss, or you cannot, by your choice, decide not to take that exemption, right? Now, exemptions, now this is what they have explained the entire section. Now, exemption could be for goods, exemption could be for services. However, what we are going to study is not for goods. Our entire chapter is designed only around exemption for services. So you have to keep in mind that we are not going to study any exemption for goods. We are only going to study exemption for services. For goods, the exemption is given in the rate entry by making the rate as 0, which we call as nil rated. And for services, we are having a specific exemption and notification. So services are listed out in the specific exemption notification. So since goods, in major cases, the exemption is by way of a rate entry. Hence, we are not dealing with the rate schedule. So nowhere in your entire syllabus you have the rate schedule to be studied. Hence, we are also not studying the exemption for goods. Our entire chapter deals only with exemption for services, right? But we will take a 10 minutes break over here. After 10 minutes, we will start dealing with the exemption entry for services. Fine. Now, we are going to study the exemption dealing only with services, not with goods, as we discussed. Now, within the exemption for services, we will be covering all the exemption entries. Now, there are two parts in the exemption entry. One is the entry given in the notification, and then you have some clarification, some explanation given, which is below the notification entries in the form of some type of explanation. So we have the basic entry. The best part, what I like of this chapter in our module is that instead of going entry wise, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, what our module has done, our module has combined similar entries or pertaining to similar type of exemptions together so that we get a flow of the exemptions. So first we are going to deal with services which are related to charitable and religious activities. In this, as you can see, you have around 4 entries which are on similar lines where there is some or the other services by charitable and religious activities. So let us start with entry 1. Now, when we talk about entry 1, as you can see over here, it appears to be one line. Why? But here, when you see, you have a detailed entry. So what is the difference? The original exemption entry simply says that charitable activities done by a trust which is registered under section 12AA or 12AB of the Income Tax Act. I'm sure you all would be recalling that income tax also has this concept of public charitable trust, and there is exemption to them under section 11, 12 and 13 of the Income Tax Act. Now over there, this particular point is common, that over there also you need to take registration to get the exemption. So what GST has done, instead of providing a separate registration process under GST, they have said that those who are registered under the income tax law as a charitable entity, for us, they are charitable entities. But the important is that this exemption is not for the same charitable transactions which income tax exempts. So income tax and GST, only one thing is common, that the entities are registered under the same income tax provisions. But what is exempt under income tax for the same entity is not necessarily exempt in GST. So in short, the exemption scope is different for income tax and for GST. So the entity is same. It is a trust registered under 12AA or AB of the Income Tax Act, but some of their activities which are exempt in income tax may be taxable in GST and vice versa. So let us understand what is exempt and what is the scope of the exemption relating to this. This is an important exemption. See, we are going to read many exemption entries. All may not be relevant for exams. We will try to focus more on what is relevant. Swaminathan. Or if anybody else wants to read, I'm okay. No? Then I'll request Swaminathan.
Yes, sir. Services provided by charitable or religious trust. Entry 1 of the notification. Exempt service supplied by an activity registered under section 12AA, 12AB of the Income Tax Act 1961 by way of charitable activities. Thus, in order to claim exemption under entry 1 of the notification, following two conditions must be satisfied. Condition number 1, the entity should be registered under section 12AA, 12AB of the Income Tax Act 1961, and the entity must carry out one or more of the specified charitable activities.
So this is where the difference is. That what is different in GST is that we will exempt only those activities which are charitable activities as per the GST. So your activities under income tax may be exempt. If you see the income tax law, there is a concept called as, if I'm rightly remembering the phrase, some general public utility. So where you are doing anything which is in general public utility, it can be anything. So anything and everything can get exempt under the income tax. However, here we have defined that only some specific activities, which are over here called as the charitable activities, will only be exempt. Now, these charitable activities are given as an explanation below the entire entries list. So that is where our module has done the best part, that instead of going list wise, they have taken every specific point and also added all the relevant explanations. If there are any circular notification, that is also added here. So now we are going to study the list of activities which are considered as charitable activities under the GST law, and only where a charitable trust registered under 1288 AB is performing any of these activities, only when both things combine, there will be exemption. Now, one thing I would clarify before we proceed, that whenever we read or hear the word charitable, we presume that whatever they are doing will be free. But let me tell you one thing. Here we are not talking about the free activities. Why? Because whatever they are doing, if it is free, anyways, there will be no GST because it is not a supply, because it is without consideration, except where it is falling in Schedule 1. But here, when we are concerned with this particular exemption entries, that is where these are charitable entities, but what they are doing, they are charging for it. So these activities are not done free. If they are free, then not only these, any activities of the trust which are done free will be exempt. Understand this. Exempt means, sorry, it will not be a supply in the first place. But here we are talking about exemption because firstly, they have charged for it. And now since they have charged for it, the supply component is satisfied. If you remember, I had said how to proceed. First, there should be a transaction. Second, the transaction should be supply. Third, it should not be exempt. And then you will go to the taxability part. So this is how we proceed to analyze any transaction. So firstly, there is a consideration. These are not done free, so that you satisfy the supply test. Now, these specific activities only will be exempt. Remaining everything done by the trust for which they are charging a consideration or a price will be taxable. Go ahead, Swaminath.
Yeah, yeah. Before proceeding further, let us first understand the meaning of the term charitable activities. The term charitable activities means activities relating to 1. Public health by way of care or counseling of terminally ill persons or persons with severe physical or mental disability, person affected with HIV or AIDS, person addicted to a dependence forming substance such as narcotics, drugs, or alcohol, or
So firstly, what is covered? Any activity which is for public health. Now, interestingly, we already have healthcare services as exemption. Whether healthcare services are covered over here, answer is no. Why? Because here you are not doing any operation. Here you are not giving any treatment. What you are only doing is care or counseling. So let us first understand what this particular entry will cover. So you have many NGOs. Now I'll use the word NGOs because normally we recognize trust by these names in our day-to-day parlance. So there are NGOs which are working on these lines. What they are doing, they are taking care of these people. So at times what happens, let us say the first entry, person who is suffering from physical or mental disability. Nowadays, especially in bigger cities where everybody is working, let us say there is a person in the family who is suffering from any of physical or even worse, some mental disability. Now you permanently need to have someone taking care of this person. Now either you appoint some caretaker in the family, which again many times is nowadays not preferred for various security and safety reasons. So people do not prefer having an outsider and taking care of some family member in the family who is suffering from some physical or mental disability. So for such cases, you have NGOs who run, you cannot call it as a hospital because hospital is a different thing where there is treatment also. They run a type of, what you can say, a center where you can keep these persons so that at least they will be taking care of them. They will be motivating them. They will be, let us say, involving them into games, into other creative activities, so that these people are able to spend their life comfortably. Plus, the other family members who are otherwise occupied in their daily routine, they are also not getting stuck up. They need not throughout 24 hours take care of that person. So from either side, it is a win-win situation. So now you have, especially in bigger cities, such NGOs who run such type of centers where these people can go and stay. And they are not providing this free, they are doing it on chargeable basis. Plus, like in our Maharashtra, we have this place called as Nasha Mukti Kendra. So, what is this Nasha Mukti Kendra? Again, it is run by an NGO. It is a place where people who are addicted with dependence forming substance. So, what is a dependence forming substance? Any substance which, if you are consuming, you get addicted because you have a dependence that without consuming that. So, it may be drugs, it may be tobacco, it may be alcohol. In fact, now I believe very soon you'll have for this also. This is also, I believe, the biggest dependence forming substance today. Without this, people cannot today even wake up or go to sleep. So very soon
Yes, phone is a part of the organ now.
that is the worst part. So it is part of organ, as you rightly said, but it is damaging your multiple organs. So now these NGOs are working whereby they are not treating, they are just taking care of that person. So that person is taken care of by these NGOs. And then the last one was NGOs who are working for creating awareness of preventive health, family planning. So you have NGOs who go door to door canvassing or explaining people about the family planning measures because population is a problem, or how they can use proper measures to avoid HIV infections, or how they can maintain cleanliness around, like this generally happens in slums type of places where because of the areas not being clean, the premises not being clean, people may contract dengue, malaria, and all these things. So for creative awareness about health, so all these NGOs are working. So first type of charitable trusts or NGOs activities which are eligible for exemption is public health by way of care and counseling. So generally these NGOs work in a fashion that they run a center where people get their relatives, their known ones admitted not for treatment but for staying there, and their care is taken, and people pay charges for that because it is like a type of lodging facility also. So they stay there, they eat there, and they are taken care of. This is the first thing which is exempt. Yes, go ahead, Swaminathan.
Advancement of religion, spirituality, or yoga. Advancement of educational program, skills development relating to abandoned, orphaned, or homeless children, physically or mentally abused and traumatized person, prisoners, person over the age of 65 years residing in a rural area.
Now, the example for second one is you have all these religious trusts which are maybe taking care of some temple, mosque. So what they are doing is they are into advancement of religion. Many of these trusts are selling various items for promoting the advancement of religion. So that is where these trusts come. Similarly, there are many yoga centers or spirituality centers. So yoga centers are those centers like the pioneer in India, you can say, is today Ramdev Baba, because he's the one who started that revolution in India. Before that, very few people were doing yoga and taking yoga much seriously, but now he has brought a revolution whereby you have either individuals who train yoga or there are yoga centers. Now where individual is training yoga, no exemption. Why? Because individual cannot be a trust registered under 12AA. So many times you have individual trainers. Nowadays you have online yoga courses. Those will not be exempt because they are not registered as a trust. But where Patanjali, which is a trust, is carrying out yoga programs, like they have yoga camps. Now, generally they are free, but let us say they are doing it on charging basis. So if Patanjali Trust or for that matter, any other trust runs a yoga program, a 10-day program, a 1 month program, and it is on charging basis, that is what will be exempt. Similarly, you have all these centers like Brahma Kumaris and similar other centers which train you into various spiritual activities, which includes meditation, which includes connecting with yourself. So they have different programs, they have different courses on spirituality. Again, since they are registered as a trust, it will be exempt. If an individual is doing in his individual capacity and not registered as a trust, it will be taxable or at least not exempt here. And then advancement of educational programs for all these persons is what will be exempt. And fourth one is preservation of environment, including watershed, forests, wildlife. So this is again what is we all see. So there are Save the Tigers NGO, there are Save Forest NGO, then nowadays Save Rivers, Save this water bodies. So there are multiple NGOs who are working on this. And when they are charging some service fees, let us say you want to create a recycling plant in your society, in your house, and you ask some NGO to come and help you do that. Or let us say you have a lake around your area and you want that lake to be properly preserved. So you appoint some NGO and they are charging something. So all those services would be exempt. Now, there are some clarifications which are important. Read from here in the following paras.
Sir, okay. Activities of schools, colleges, or any other educational institution run by charitable trust by way of education or skills development of abundant or orphan, homeless children, physically or mentally abused persons, prisoners, or persons over age of 65 years or above residing in a rural area will be considered as charitable activities, and the income from such supplies will be wholly exempt from GST.
Now, this is relating to one of the above entries. Now, a confusion that many times people have is, sir, we already have exemption for schools and colleges. So will it this not be overlapping? The answer is no. Why? I'll tell you. When we go to the entry of that education where schools, colleges are covered, it is linked with a condition that it is for granting you some degree. Now, many times for these people, like let us say who are mentally abused or people who are prisoners, you may not be running an entire course which will be actually giving them a degree. Like let us say there are prisoners, you want to teach them English, you want to teach them Sanskrit, or you want to teach them some basic skills of life which will help them to get a better employment whenever they are released. Similarly, for aged people, that is above 65 years of age, residing in rural area. Now, they may not be going for a proper education to get a qualification or degree. So that is where the difference between a school, college, that exemption entry for education and this entry, which is made for trust, is covered, because here, whatever education or skill training they are doing, that may not lead to any qualification, which is one of the requirements for exemption in case of schools and trusts. So that is what is the difference, which I thought I'll point out. Yes.
The term rural area means the area comprised in a village as defined in land revenue records, excluding the area under any municipal committee, municipal corporation, town area committee, cantonment board, or notified any committee or any area that may be notified as an urban
Urban
area
area.
by the central government or a state government.
Okay. Go ahead from here.
Okay. Hostel accommodation.
No,
Hostel.
about that, activities.
Okay. Activities of school, college, or an institution run by trust which do not come within the ambit of charitable activities will not be exempt under entry 1. However, such activities may be exempt under entry 66 discussed later in the charter, provided the school, college, or institution qualifies as an educational institution.
Correct. Now, what is important? Now, see, to fall in this entry, I said that you need not satisfy the requirements which we are going to study in entry 66. That is, you should not necessarily be imparting any degree. So even if you're not imparting any degree or your education is not leading to any degree, still you will be eligible for exemption under this entry. Correct. But the other side of this is also important, that to be covered under this entry, two conditions have to be satisfied. First, you should be a trust. Second, you should be carrying out this activity only for the people listed above, like prisoners, orphan children, or physically, mentally abused persons, or senior citizens residing in rural area. If you are running a school college, let us say a charitable institution is running a school college, which many times happens, but that school college is not for orphan children or for homeless children, then they will not be falling in this exemption. Yes, they may get exemption, but then they will have to satisfy the requirements of entry 66. That is, they should fit in the definition of education institution, which I am explaining, that your training, etc., should lead to some qualification, etc. So then, even though you are a trust, but if it is not for prisoners, if it is not for homeless children, etc., you will get out of entry 1. You will not get exemption here. Then to get exemption, you have to satisfy the requirements of educational entry, which is under 66. So this is where you have to be very clear. There may be overlapping. You are a trust running a proper school. In that particular case, you go to 66 because 66 is a more appropriate entry for you. If you are not running a proper school, but you are providing education, you are a trust, then you will come in entry 1, but then you should be providing it specifically to those 4 categories of persons. This is what differentiation has been brought out. Yes, go ahead, please.
Hostel accommodations provided by trust. Hostel accommodation services provided by trust to students do not fall within the ambit of charitable activities as defined above.
Now, why this is important? Because when we'll go to the education entry, in education entry, where you are joining a proper school college, which is an education institution, then when that school college is providing you accommodation, when that school college is providing you food, everything is covered over there in that educational exemption. So many times what people do, we try to draw analogy and we try to make it same, but that is what is clarified, that if let us you are a charitable trust, you are running an educational organization for the people above, you are eligible for this exemption, but this exemption entry is covering only the educational part. It is not covering hostel, accommodation, the food, etc. So that is what is the differentiation. If you fall in the education entry 66, you get over their exemption even for hostel and food that you charge to students. In fact, even the transport that you charge to students. So that is what is the comparison we are trying to draw. Yes.
Sure,
Now
then I
some
have
more
one
entries
question.
which, yeah,
I
please
have
tell
one
me.
question. See, in the urban or where that homeless children, there are
Hmm.
maintaining some rentals. No, they have some hostel is there for which
Correct.
these sometimes they are charging monthly fees as well. Sometimes they are free of cost as well. Whenever
Correct.
charging the monthly fees, whether it is not exempted.
That's what is the point, na? So when they are charging the fees for this rental or accommodation, it will not be exempt under this entry because this
Yeah,
entry is
yeah.
only for the education part. So if they are also parallelly falling in the entry 66, that is, they are satisfying the requirements over there, then they can take the exemption there. Are you getting the point?
Right, sir. I think, okay. On the entry number 13, they given a renting of rooms where charges are
That
1,000
is a
or
different.
more.
That is different. That we are coming. See, we are still on the first entry. We are
Okay,
still
okay.
discussing about the charitable activities. When you are saying about the room, over there the requirement is then different. We'll come to that entry also.
Okay, okay, sir. Still now I am under impression that the hostel provided for the urbanage is exempt from tax.
No, 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 no. You have to then fall in this other entry for that exemption. That is this entry number
66,
13, 13, 13. So what
13.
you are talking
Okay,
about, I think you are talking about 13, which also covers trust. But then there are some other conditions. We'll come to that. We are still on entry 1. Whatever explanation discussions we are having, it is still on entry 1. So you may not be covered in entry
okay,
1.
fine, sir.
This is what they are saying. You may be covered in even 13 or 66, subject to you satisfy the conditions over there, right?
Right, sir.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, religious yatra or pilgrimage. Religious yatra or pilgrimage organized by any charitable or religious trust are not exempt.
Okay.
Only such services or religious pilgrims as are provided by specified organization in respect of a religious pilgrims facilitated by the government of India under bilateral agreement or exempt from GST. See entry number 60 in the above table. The term specified organization as referred herein means uh, Kumanon Mandal Vikas Nikom Limited.
Kumaon. Okay. So
Kuman.
simply the point is now under this entry, what will not be covered? See, this entry covers promotion of religion or advancement of religion, but it will not cover where, let us say, you are organizing some pilgrimage. So let us say you are going for the Char Dham Yatra. So many times people plan that type of a trip or a what you say a pilgrimage where they will be taking you to the Char Dham Yatra and they are charging a lump sum package of let us say 50,000 per person. That will not be covered over here. Again, for that there is a specific entry, and for that you have to be specific person like these bodies or these entities which are generally government undertakings. So until and unless you are that, you will not be eligible for this exemption. That is what they are trying to clarify. Correct? Then it is about arranging yoga and meditation camp. I've already explained what will be covered over here. Then hospitals managed by charitable trust. Again, what they are saying that exemption is available to healthcare entry under 74. It is also available to healthcare entry provided by clinical establishments. So if you are doing proper running a proper hospital for providing the healthcare services, that will be exempt, but that will be exempt again in some other entry which is made for healthcare services. Here what is covered is only the care and counseling. So what we are trying to understand is that for specific activities there are different entries. We have to understand that those entries and this entry you cannot mix up because the conditions are different. Yes, there may be overlapping. If you satisfy the requirements over there, you will still get the exemption, but it would be under a separate entry, but not under this entry. Then comes this point, training or coaching in arts or sports. Please read this.
As per entry 80, services by way of training or coaching in recreational activities relating to arts or culture by an individual or sports by charitable entities registered under section 12AA or 12AB of the Income Tax Act are exempt from GST.
Now, this is one more entry above where they are talking about providing some type of training or coaching. Now, what is this? There are two things here. One is recreational activities like dance, music. These comes under recreational, or it is sports. Like we have many sports academies. We have cricket coaching academies. We have nowadays football. We have these kabaddi academies, not the tournaments. That is a different thing. So if these sports training academies or coaching academies are registered as a trust, many times you have individual coaches who provide the coaching services. That will not be covered over here. You have to be registered as a trust. So two things are covered. One is recreational activities in some art form. What can be art form? It can be singing, dancing, or it has to be related to culture. So it may be different types of handicrafts, which are the cultural art forms of a particular place. So like you have this Madhubani art form. So all these things, when it is now interestingly what it is says, recreational activities relating to culture by an individual. So this thing, when taught by an individual, is exempt, and the sports, when it is sports coaching done by a charitable entity, it is exempt. So here there are two different types of exemptions, both covered into one entry. Please read the detailings.
It is important to note that the exemptions with regard to services provided by way of training or coaching in recreational activities relating to arts or culture is available when the same is provided by an individual. Similarly, Services of training or coaching in sports are exempt only when such services are provided by an charitable entity registered under Section 12A or 12AB of the Income Tax Act. Let us now analyze the term recreational activities. The term recreational activities in very wide. However, under the entry, the scope of training or coaching in recreational activities is restricted to the area of arts and culture. Hence, the training or coaching in recreational activities relating to the area other than arts or culture is outside the purview of this entry. Further, training or coaching in all forms of arts, culture, or sports is covered under this entry, namely dance, music, painting, sculpture making, literacy activities, theatre, etc., of any school, traditional or language, or any of the sports.
Fine. So they have made it very clear as to what will be specifically covered in each of the activities. So training, coaching in all forms of art, culture, sport is covered under this entry. So it will cover any of these things. So you should be able to draw a connection with arts or culture or sports. Now, GST on services provided to charitable trust is not exempt. So this exemption is not qua the person, this exemption is qua the activity. Only when the trust is giving its outward services which fits into the definition of the charitable activities, that is exempt. But if it is receiving anything from outside, the inward supplies of the trust is not covered in this exemption entry. They may be covered, but that would be under specific entries if there are any. But under this entry, anything received by trust is not covered. Now we go to the next entry, which is covering two things. One, conduct of a religious ceremony or renting of the premises precincts. Now, there are two separate entries in the second category. So it is 13A, 13B. 13A is covering all the services where we ask some person, like in case of this, what you say, we appoint some Panditji, we appoint some person who performs this Homa Yagna, we let us say appoint a father of the church. So these are the persons who are, you can say, designated or authorized by the specific religious text. So every religion has its own text, and the text prescribes that who is the person who is supposed to be the knowledgeable person of the rituals and the ceremonies. And when we appoint these persons, or when let's say I should use the word, let us say when we hire them for performing any of those ritual ceremonies, we pay them some dakshina, we pay them some fees. That fees is what is exempt in 13A. 13B will cover the services where there is again a religious body or a trust which has some premises which it is giving on rent. So these are two different services, though covered under the same entry. First service is by an individual who is the designated person as per your specific religious text to perform the religious ceremonies. And B covers the services by a trust whereby it has some premises which it is giving on rent. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Conduct of any religious ceremony. Going through entry 13A, it can be inferred that the amount charged by whatever name called for the conduct of any religious ceremony is exempt from GST. Religious ceremonies are life cycle rituals, including special religious pujas conducted in terms of religious texts by the person so authorized by such religious texts. Occasions like birth, marriage, and death involve elaborate religious ceremonies.
So simply, right from birth up till death, we have multiple ceremonies. Again, these ceremonies are also provided in our religious text. So for conducting these ceremonies, which may be in the form of puja, havan, or any type of religious like Griha Pravesh, etc. All these are religious ceremonies, and these have to be performed by a specified or a nominated person, again by our text. So whatever dakshina fees we give to them, that is what is covered in this particular part A. Next is part B. This is what I think, Swaminathan, you were talking about. So this is where if the trust is providing its premises on rent, it will be exempt, but it is coming with some riders. Please read.
Renting of presence of religious place meant for general public. Entry 13B exempt renting of precinct of the religious place meant for general public owned by entity registered under any of the specified section of the Income Tax Act, provided in consideration charged for such renting does not exceed the prescribed ceiling limits as given in said entry. Thus,
Wait. Now this is where, so when we were talking about the previous entry, you asked that if these charitable trusts are providing some hostels, whether it will be exempt under entry one. Obviously, it is not exempt under entry one. Question is whether it will be exempt under 13B. Answer is still no. Because here, though, one part of the condition is that you are an entity registered under the specified sections of income tax, that it is 12AA and 12AB. But what is important is you should also be a religious place meant for general public. So besides being a trust, besides being registered as a trust, by nature you should be a religious place. So this may not cover the persons whom we studied in entry one, because entry one will cover NGOs. NGOs are not religious places. Religious places are all these places like mandir, dargah, church. So basically this entry is applicable to all these mandir, dargah, church, where gurudwaras, which are one, registered as a trust. So majority all these are registered as trust. Second, they are a religious place meant for general public. So all these places like gurudwara, mandirs, etc., are places for public, and they are meant for religious purposes. So you go there for offering prayers, you go there for connecting to God. That is where it becomes a religious place, which is also defined below. Most importantly, if you are an NGO running some accommodation place for students or for orphans, etc., it is not covered under this entry. So, firstly, you should be a mandir, a dargah, a gurudwara, a church, so you become a religious place. Secondly, you should be registered as a trust, which generally 99% of these are. Thirdly, this religious place, it's presents. Now, the interestingly, the word uses presents. What is presents? So, particularly religious place is that mandir, the place where you are worshipping. However, that mandir has a huge area which may have small gardens, parks. Plus, it may also have constructed some dharmashalas. We normally use this word dharmashala, which is a place to stay. Similarly, it may have constructed some small halls, or it may have an open lawn. And all these things, the religious place is giving on rent. Now, why it is giving on rent? Because in order to run the expenses of that religious place, the pujaris or the maulanas who stay there, for their expenses plus for the upkeep and maintenance of that religious place, they will need some money. So people donate, that is one thing, but at times they will need a proper and consistent source. So they generally construct some part of their entire precincts, their area, as small residing accommodation places, which are called as generally dharmashalas, or they may construct it as small halls, and they give these places on rent. That is the only rent which is exempt over here, and we are going to study the monetary limit up to which the rent would be exempt. Now, these definitions are important because these are the terminologies used. So, what is exempt is the renting service. The renting service is given in the presence of a religious place which is meant for general public. So, these three definitions become important. Please read.
yes, sir. Religious place means a place which is is primarily meant for conduct of prayers or worship pertaining to a religion, meditation, or spirituality. General
Okay.
public
So
means
religious place. Now, interesting. See, the best part what I like is nowhere the word God is used. Importantly, we have been mistaught. I should use the word. We have been mistaught that religion is connected to God. They have nowhere used the word God. Yes, they have used the word religion, but whether religion should necessarily be connected to God, the answer is not necessarily. Like here, in religious place, they are saying it is meant for conduct of prayers or worship pertaining to religion, and the same thing may be pertaining to meditation, and the same thing pertaining to spirituality. So important is religious place need not always have a connection with God only. Though we have been imbibed in our minds that religion means God, that is not necessary. Even the place for meditation, even the place for spiritual practices will also be considered as a religious place. So, religion or religious is not only confined to God. So, that is what has been coming out from this definition also. Please go ahead.
general public means the body of people at large sufficiently defined by some common quality of public or impersonal nature.
So, what is this? So, when we are saying general public, because these religious places, what is the condition? It should be meant for general public. So, what is general public? It is opposite of identified persons. So, if I say these 20, these 50, these 100 persons whom I am identifying, they only can visit the place. It is not a general public place. Where people at large can visit. Yes, you can put some criteria, like they have said, maybe having some common quality or some common common attribute. Like I can say that people of a particular following a particular religion can visit. That is fine, but I have not identified the individuals. I have not named them. That is general public. So general public can be a group following a particular rituals, a group following a particular god, a group following a particular beliefs. That is still a general public because I have not identified them. So I can restrict to a particular group, but it should not be identified persons. That will be general public. Go ahead.
Yes, the word present is not interpreted in restricted manner, and all immovable property of the religious place located within the outer boundary walls of the complex of building or facilities in which the religious place is located is to be considered as being located in the present of the religious place. The immovable property located in the immediate vicinity of the surroundings of the religious place and owned by the religious place or under the same management as the religious place may be considered as being located in the precinct of the religious place and extended the benefit of above exemption.
So now we are talking about renting of the presents. Now present is a much wider term. So they have clearly said that present should not be interpreted in a restricted manner. And all the immobile property of the place which is located within the outer boundary walls of the complex in which the religious place is located is to be considered as being located in the precincts. Now this is very interesting. It is saying the immobile property which is located within the outer boundary walls. Now what is this outer boundary wall? So one, let us say there is a mandir. Now the mandir also has a boundary within which the mandir and the passage etc. is there, and then there is a whole outer boundary of a huge place. Now many times you'll find that a trust has acquired a 1 acre property. In that 1 acre, it has only occupied 20% of the area for the actual mandir. Remaining 80% of this 1 acre is for, let us say, garden or for something, and this is how the whole 1 acre area is there. Now, interestingly, out of that 1 acre, only 20%, maybe 10%, maybe 5%, maybe the actual religious place, let us say the temple. But this entire 1 acre is the precincts. That is what it means by the outer boundary wall. So what is inner and what is outer? Inner is specifically of the mandir or the dargah. Outer is of that entire property. So that entire property will have a, let us say, some boundary, and that entire boundary or the entire area within this boundary is what is the precincts. That is what is the expanse of this particular definition. And then for this, they have given the monetary limits up to which the rent would be exempt. So here the monetary limits are given. What are the monetary limits? The monetary limits are where rooms are given. It should not be more than 1,000. Sorry, not even 1,000. It should be below 1,000. So up to 999 per day room charges, then it will be exempt. If it is 1,000, it becomes taxable. Similarly, if they are giving halls or Kalyana Mandapam or any open area for conducting any functions, then the charges should be up to maximum 9,999. It will be exempt. Even if it is 10,000, it will be taxable. And when that place also has shops or commercial places and it is giving it on rent, then the limit is that the shop rent should not be 10,000 or more. It should be below 10,000. And here it is per month because generally shops are given on per month basis. So this is how the exemption limits are provided. So the rent of the places which falls within this limit, one is for rooms, one is for halls, and one is for shops, is only what is eligible for the exemption. I hope this is clear to everyone. Now, we come to the second category. This relates to agriculture. Now, please again remember, whenever we say agriculture, what comes in front of our eyes is the goods. So when we say agriculture, we think of rice, we think of wheat, we think of maize. Correct? That is agricultural produce. Here, we are in the service exemption entries. So here the exemption is not for the sale of these goods. Here the exemption is for different services relating to these goods. Now, what services are covered, that we will read in this particular entire list. However, what is important to note is many of these services are exempt if these services are provided for agricultural produce. Means they are establishing a link with the goods, obviously, because until and unless there is agricultural goods, you cannot define what services will be exempt. For example, I will say transportation is exempt. So transportation is a service, but transportation of what? Transportation of agricultural goods. So there are certain services which, if performed on or for the agricultural goods, is what is covered under this exemption. So we will also see the definition of agricultural goods later in the explanation part. But be clear, sale of agricultural goods is not a service. It is sale of or supply of goods, and hence it is not covered in this notification because this notification is only for service exemptions. Just keep that in mind. Please read, Swaminathan, the list of services which are exempt.
Agriculture related services. Entry number 24. Services by way of loading, unloading, packing, storage, or warehousing of rice.
So first entry covers these specific services, but they are pertaining to rice. Now, interestingly, whether rice is agricultural produce or not, that is what we are going to discuss when we study the definition of agricultural produce. But what does entry 24 means? Whether rice is agriculture commodity or not. Since here we are simply saying that for these services done for rice, there is exemption. So rice may be agricultural commodity, or today it may have become manufactured commodity. Still, if you perform these services like packing, storage, loading, unloading, we will give exemption. Go ahead.
Entry number 24A, services by of warehousing of minor forest produce.
Next.
24B, entry number 24B, services by of storage, warehousing of cereals, pulses, fruits and vegetables.
Again, see, you will find separate entries. Why? Because like 24A is only covering warehousing. Warehousing for minor forest produce. Now, what is a minor forest produce? So there are two types of forest produce, minor and major. It is in terms of its size, its weight. So when, let us say, you cut the forest trees, you get the logs, the woods. So even you are transporting the wood, the log, that is a major forest produce. That will not be covered here. So if you are warehousing the wood, that will not be covered. But where you are warehousing the smaller output from forest, like certain type of leaves which may be used for making some goods, those are minor forest produce. Then certain types of berries or certain types of some small fruits, so all these come under the minor forest produce. So one is the major forest produce, that is the huge trees and all. When you cut and you store it, it is not covered. But the smaller things which are grown in forest, they are covered. And then the next service is again storage, warehousing of cereal pulses. Again, this may or may not be agricultural produce. It may be agricultural, it may be manufactured. Both are covered. Means the warehousing and storage service of both are covered. Now, this entry 54 is the main entry which covers majorly all agriculture related services. Let us see what are they. Please go ahead.
Entry number 54, services relating to cultivation of plants and rearing of all life forms of animals except the rearing of horse for food, fiber, fuel, raw material or other similar products or agricultural produce by way of A. Agriculture operations likely directly related to production of any agricultural produce, including cultivation, harvesting, uh, threshing, plant production, or testing. B. Supply of farm labor. C. Process processes carried out an agricultural farm, including tending, uh,
Burning, burning,
burning, cutting, harvesting, drying, cleaning, trimming, sun drying, fumigating,
fumigation.
fumigating, curing, sorting, grading, cooling, or bulk packaging, and such like operations which do not alter the essential characteristics of agricultural produce but make it only marketable for the primary markets.
Okay. Now, firstly, the entry starts with this word, services relating to. So, anyways, as we discussed, we are only reading the service exemption. So, we will be talking about services. Now, it is relating to what? This part is what is the definition of agricultural produce that we are going to study separately. So, in short, I will replace this whole part with one word, agricultural produce. So, services relating to agricultural produce by way of. So since we have to give exemption to agriculture services, what are agriculture services? They are any of these services covered in A, B, C, D, E, etc. But they should be relating to the agricultural produce. Now, what are these services? First is the actual agricultural operations. So what is actual agricultural operations? It is cultivation, harvesting, etc. Now see, today in India at least, we are either ourselves doing agriculture, we means the farmers, or we appoint laborers who are paid on wages. Now, when either we are doing it, there is no service, and where we are hiring laborers who are paid wages, they become no supply because Schedule 3 keeps the wages and salaries outside. But in some other parts of India and majorly in foreign countries, many times people outsource the entire agricultural operations to some outside person. So the farmer himself, herself is not doing any agricultural operations. So any of these operations like cultivation, harvesting, etc., which is part of agricultural activities, is not done by the farmer, rather it is outsourced to specialized agencies In fact, in foreign countries, there are specialized agencies for each of these separately. Now, let us say the same culture comes to India. In fact, it has started coming because the present generation, like people of my age and obviously after me, your age, they are now not interested in themselves doing the hard work on the farm because that is very tedious, that is very at times painful. So what these people are doing, they are now using the latest business models whereby they appoint a specialized agency who will do these activities for them. Now let us say I am a farmer having some 100 acres of farmland, and I am appointing one agency whom I'm asking to do the cultivation. The other one will do harvesting. The other one may do plant protection testing. So I can give contracts to different agencies for carrying out these activities. Now, whatever remuneration I'll pay to them, that will be exempt in part A. Similarly, let us say I'm not outsourcing the entire work. I say that, okay, let me hire people and let me do the agriculture, though I myself may not be doing agriculture, but I will be supervising it. But for that, I need people to do the work. Now, from where will I get these workers to work on my farm? So I approach a manpower supply agency who provides all types of manpower. So I tell them, boss, I have this 100 acres of land and I want to do harvesting, cultivation. So you provide me farm labor. So I am not having anybody on my payroll because again, various labor laws will come in, other headaches will come in. So best, like you will find this type of thing in all these tea plantations across India, tea coffee plantations, that many times the company, let us say the Tata Tea or the Brook Bond or the Red Label, all these companies, they approach a labor contractor and the labor contractor has to provide them the workers and I pay to the labor contractor. Now this is for supply of farm labor, which is exempt. Further, going into more minute things, there are certain processes that have to be done on the farmland. Now, this is, you can say, the breakup of harvesting, cultivation. These are the in detailed small activities. So it may happen that I may further give the contract of one small activities to outside agencies to whom I will be paying the charges. The charges paid for carrying out any of these activities on my farmland will be exempt. So this first ABC is covering the different types of actual farm activities for which I am hiring some outside agency or I am hiring a person who will be providing me labor for this, and that is what will be exempt. Go ahead.
Renting or leasing of agro machinery or vacant land with or without structure incidental to its use. Loading, unloading, packing, storage or warehousing of agricultural produce. Agricultural extension services. Services by any agricultural produce marketing committee or board or services provided by an commission agent for sale or purchase of agricultural produce.
Okay. Now D is what? Now let us say I have hired these farm labor from some labor contractor. But if I have to get the cultivation and all done, I will require maybe some agro machineries like tractors and different machineries, which will carry out different activities on my farm. So now I'm taking these machines on rent. So the rent which I'm paying for these tractors, machine will also be exempt. Similarly, let us say I myself do not want to do agriculture, but I have 100 acres of land, and you are interested in doing the agriculture either by yourself or by hiring, appointing these people. So, what simply you are asking me to do? You are asking me to give my agriculture land to you on rent. So, what I'm giving to you is directly I'm giving my land to you. You do the cultivation. So, in such cases, the rent which you are going to pay to me, that will be exempt. So, rent may be for the land or for the entire agro machinery. Now, interesting point is this E and compare it with 24. This is where the next discussion will be very interesting. That you have already covered loading, unloading, packing, warehousing of agricultural produce in this entry. then what was the need to separately cover rice in 24? This is what is the difference between anything being an agricultural produce and not being an agricultural produce. The question is rice not an agricultural produce? Answer is no, it is. Similarly, are these pulses, fruits not agricultural produce? Yes, they are. So when you have made this entry, which covers loading, unloading, packing, storage, warehouse of agricultural produce, what was the need to provide these three entries separately? The answer is this entry, where all these services are covered, will provide exemption. All these services would be exempt only if the goods for which this packing is done, for which the storage is done, is agricultural produce. But if the goods are not agricultural produce, then their loading, unloading will not be exempt. However, it will still be exempt if the goods are rice, minor forest produce, or fruit, cereal, pulses. For them, carrying out of these activities will still remain exempt whether or not these are agricultural produce. It means what? That there is some thin line of difference which will distinguish one rice which may be agricultural produce from another rice which is not agricultural produce, which will distinguish cereal, pulses, fruits which may be agricultural produce from fruits which may not be agricultural produce. What is that thin line of difference that we have to study and discuss? And besides that, these specific services of agriculture extension or given by your APMC market committees, these are also exempt. But now the question is, what is agricultural produce, what is not? And to understand this, we have to keep the example of rice, wheat, etc. What comes to your house? So we have rice coming to our house. We purchase rice, we purchase wheat, we purchase maize, we purchase vegetables daily, we purchase milk daily. Whether these are agricultural produce or not, for this, let us go through this definition to understand whether the rice, wheat, etc. coming to your house is agricultural produce or not. Please read the definition, Beda.
Agricultural produce means any produce out of cultivation of plants and rearing of all life form of animals except the rearing of horses for food, fiber, fuel, raw materials or other similar products
Okay, wait.
on
Now the first part of this definition says agriculture produce will means any produce which is either from cultivation of plants or rearing of life forms of animals. Now interesting. Two types of output, I should say, or two types of produce will come in agricultural produce. First, which is from cultivation of plants. Now, interestingly, if you go to any other definition of agriculture, be it under the Income Tax Act or even the dictionary, you will find an interesting difference that generally the definition of agriculture says cultivation of land. But GST has not used the word cultivation of land, it has used the word cultivation of plants because plants grow even in water bodies. We have different types of plants, of flower, of different types of certain fruits or vegetables which grow in lakes and ponds. We have different plants which grow in the sea. Now, these plants, the cultivation of these plants will also be covered in agriculture. So, whatever output you get by cultivating these plants, which may be in the form of flower, fruits, or any type of vegetables, whether the plant is grown on land or whether it is in the waters, that will both be covered here. So, this is what is the importance of cultivation of plant versus cultivation of land. Then comes the second part, that is whatever produce you get from rearing of live forms of animals. Now in this part, let us try to compare it with definition under income tax. If you read the income tax definition, in income tax, agriculture is limited, restricted only to cultivation of land or cultivation of plants. Agricultural produce or over their agricultural income does not covers the income coming out from rearing of animals. So let us say if you are running this dairy or you are having a poultry farm. So in agriculture, the income from sale of milk, the income from sale of eggs, the income from sale of live animals, which tomorrow can be used for slaughtering them and for getting the flesh and meat, it is not considered as agriculture income under income tax. However, the same sale of milk, the sale of eggs or the live animals is part of agricultural produce. So the interesting difference between income tax and GST law is GST law's definition of agricultural produce is much wider than that of agriculture income under the Income Tax Act. So this second part of agricultural produce covers produce which you will get from rearing of different animals except horses. And what type of produce? Which will be food, fiber, fuel, or raw material. So, like you get milk, eggs, all this will become food. You get flesh, meat, it will become food. Then you get the fur from various animals that will become the fiber. You get cow dung, cow urine, and such things will become the fuel or raw material. And similar other products like the skin of animals is also used in making jackets and making different types of shoes, etc. So all these things which you get from rearing of animals, these are also agricultural produce. So one, from plants what you get, and two, from animals what you get. Both are agricultural produce. But comes the most important part. Now, see, till this point, whatever we have discussed, the milk, the rice, the wheat, the vegetables, the fruits, whatever are coming to your house daily, up to this point of definition, they are agricultural produce. However, when we read the second part of this definition, some of these items may get out of the definition of agricultural produce. It means they may not remain an agricultural produce. That is what is interesting part. See, what is the difference? Generally for us, anything which is in raw form, for us means common in common parlance, anything which is in raw form, we treat it as agriculture. So like rice, vegetables, fruits, all are in raw form. That when you buy milk is in raw form. So for you, all these things which are in raw form will be agriculture. However, that is not the case with the law. The law has in the second part put some very specific requirement. And only when this specific requirement is met, that particular item will be agricultural produce. Let us read the second part. So now first part is what? They have classified two things which will come in agricultural produce. One, whatever you get from plants. Two, whatever you get from animals. But both these things will be agricultural produce when? That is the second part. Read. When what?
On which either no further processing is done or such processing is done as it usually done by a cultivator or producer, which does not alter its essential characteristics but make it marketable for primary market.
Very important. So all these items, that is from plants or from animals, whatever you get, will be considered as agricultural produce if one first condition, no processing is done. If no processing is done, chapter closed, it is agricultural produce. Or only such processing is done, which is usually done by the original cultivator, grower, or producer. Now, this is where some of the things coming to your house will get out of the definition of agriculture. Further, what it says, This processing is such that it will not change the identity, but it will make it marketable. And most important, marketable for primary market. Please understand this, you may have studied long back in economics in school. There is a primary market, there is a secondary market, and then it is a tertiary market. When goods come to us, it is the tertiary market. So what is coming to us is not the primary market. What is a primary market? Primary market are the APMCs, Agricultural Produce Market Committee. Generally, every city, wherever there is agriculture, you will have one big area where all farmers bring their agricultural produce, which is loaded in tractors, and it is brought to that place. And at that place, then there are different agents and all who then purchase this from the farmer. That place is the primary market. Then those agents, they sell it either to big traders, or they give it to industry, which will take it for doing some processing, and then onwards it will be secondary, tertiary market. Now the point is, where goods have no processing, they are agriculture, no doubt. But where any small activity is done, so please bear in mind, processing does not only means done by machines. Anything even done manually can be a processing. So if any type of manual activity is performed on those goods, now these manual activities can be as small as cleaning, as small as removing the roots, because many times when agriculture produce you see on the farm, they remove that entire plant which has the root, which has the mud stuck up at the lower part. In fact, there are many agricultural items which are beneath the earth. You have ginger, you have this haldi, you have so many things which are beneath the earth. When they are removed, there is lot of mud, there is lot of dirt on that, which has to be cleaned. The certain extra growings on them in the form of roots, etc., have to be cut off. These are small activities. They are also covered in processing. Now, what is important to be noted is only those processing or activities which are generally done by the farmer or by the producer, grower, cultivator, whatever you call them, is only allowed to be done. And that too, which is necessary to make it suitable for primary market. If any processing beyond that is done, your output will no more be agricultural produce. Now coming to the specific items that we were talking about, that is wheat, that is rice. Now, interestingly, the wheat coming to your house is agricultural produce, but the rice coming to your house, the dal coming to your house, all are raw. They are not agricultural produce. Why? Because of this one part. Now, see, when wheat is grown and when rice is grown, both have a outer covering, a shell on it, which is removed. And then inside the shell, you have the grain, the wheat grain or the rice grain or the dal grain. Now, importantly, when you talk about wheat, generally farmers themselves remove the shell, the upper layer or covering on the wheat grain, and they pack the wheat grain in some gunny bags and bring it to primary market. But when it comes to rice, when it comes to dal, when it comes to many of these pulses, these are having the outer covering on them, which is also called as husk. And the farmer does not remove it. The farmer brings these items to the market, again in gunny bags only, but with the outer covering. So, when a farmer who is the producer, cultivator, etc., is not removing the husk, the outer covering, then that item is agricultural produce only till it is with husk, like in case of rice, right? Like in case of dal. The moment you remove the husk, the outer covering, it is no more agricultural produce. Please be clear with it. Same thing with many of the fruits and vegetables. when farmer brings these to the primary market, the farmer may not be cleaning them. The farmer may not be removing the extra growths or the roots and all. But when you buy the same vegetable fruits, like for fruits, many times you only have the fruit, you have nothing else. But when the farmer plucks it, or the grower of that fruit plucks it from the tree, it may come with certain leaves and other things, which the grower is least bothered to remove. He or she will simply pluck it and keep it in baskets or bags and bring it to the primary market. In fact, many times the cultivator gives the contract to the contractor to plug it themselves. So when many of these vegetables, or let us say this ginger, what comes to your house is not what the farmer sells in the primary market. The ginger is having a lot of mud on it. The ginger may have some extra growths in the form of roots and all. Many of these things are cleaned. Many of these things are cut, removed by some intermediary, and then it is coming to your house through the small vendors. Please understand, even though they are in the most raw form, no processing, no machine has touched them, still they may not be agricultural produce. That is why the entry for rice was given separately, because the rice which is coming to your house is no more agricultural produce the moment the rice covering is removed, the husk is removed. This is a very, very important point. I hope you understand this. And that is why
Sir,
you find separate entries. Yes.
sir, what happens if the farmer himself is cleaning it or removing the husk?
That's why I'm
Will
saying. Now
the
see. What is the word used is usually done. Now let us say one of the farmer who is more aware of the market practices knows that if I remove this, I will get a better price. So the farmer himself appoints people who would be doing that, removing of that particular thing from the rice and all, whatever. In that case, the question is whether it will be considered as agricultural produce. Answer is no. See, we are not going to decide on case to case basis what will be and what will not be agricultural produce. We have to decide it on generic basis. So generally, if farmers do not remove that thing, then even if in some one specific case a farmer is removing, it will no more be an agricultural produce. So it is not that the farmer does it or not. It is that whether it is usually done by farmers or not. That is what is the
okay, sir.
fine, everyone. So this is where this difference of agricultural produce is there. So the rice coming to our house is not agricultural produce, but the wheat coming to our house is agricultural produce, because the wheat in the form in which it comes to our house is the exact form in which the farmer brings it to the primary market. So this particular distinction is important. Then we have small other entries, 55 and 55A. Please read.
55. Carrying out on intermediate production process such as job work, job work in relation to cultivation of plants and rearing of all life forms of animals except the rearing of horse for food, fiber, fuel, raw material, or other similar products or agricultural produce.
Will be covered if any of the above processes which are required for growing or cultivation of your agricultural produce, if any part of that process is done by some outside agency which is called as job work, it will be also eligible for exemption. Next.
Next, 55A. Services by way of artificial
Artificial insemination.
insemination of livestock other than horses.
Now, what is this artificial insemination? So it is the reproduction of livestock. So many times all these cattle owners or even farmers, they want their livestock to increase by way of reproduction. So one is what is natural reproduction. One is where there is artificial insemination of livestock. So it is something like how we have test tube babies in case of human beings. Similarly, we have the artificial insemination by which the female animal is pregnated by inserting the semen of the male animal so that the livestock can reproduce and grow. So this type of artificial insemination is some, so you can just equate it with the test tube baby concept in case of human beings. Same thing when done with animals. That activity is also eligible for exemption. Now here certain examples of all these intermediary processes and all are covered. What will be covered in the above entry and it will not be covered. Now we come to the third interesting and important category, that is the education services. Now, interestingly, till now, we were having exemption one side only for the outward service. For the first time, we will have exemption on both sides, outward also and inward also, right? Just give me a moment. I'll just take a 2 minutes refreshment break. So now we are going to deal with services. Yeah,
Sir, I have a question on rice.
please.
Whether rice itself is exempt from GST? Because services by way of loading, unloading, packaging, extra is exempt from GST tax. So
Okay.
is rice itself?
So see again, Sanjay, this is what is the point I mentioned at the start. This entire chapter is only dealing with exemption for services. It is not dealing with exemption for goods. Now, goods may not be exempt. That has nothing to do with these exemption entries. So as you ask the question that whether rice itself is exempt will make no difference. Now see, when you talk about exemption for rice, it means you are talking about exemption for sale of rice, which means supply of goods. Now
Yes.
for that, when you see the present situation, now a new condition has come, whether it is pre-packed, pre-labeled, etc. Right. So rice which is pre-packed, pre-labeled, which will be taxable. Rice which is sold open, where you go to a shopkeeper and you say, I want 5 kgs of rice. He will measure it and he will pack it in some plastic bag. That is what is exempt. Same thing with all other raw items. So majorly today, the exemption is whether these raw items, or for the timing, let me use the word agricultural produce, are pre-packed, pre-labeled. If they are pre-packed, they will be taxable. If they are not pre-packed, they will be exempt. So that is what is the situation with rice, correct? But
Okay.
irrespective of whether rice itself is taxable or exempt, this entry will always be giving exemption. So the rice which is even pre-packed, if it is transported, if it is stored, the transportation storage will be exempt because we have nothing to do with the pre-packing of rice when it comes to storage or transport or warehousing. Are you getting the point?
Yes, yes.
Sir, I think with the rice above 26 kg is exempted from tax. Up to 25 kg sale of rice is taxable. When I am purchasing the rice, I think last year, from last year, they are saying that up to 25 kgs is a GST is applicable. From that only I came to know that.
That's why I'm saying. So these amendments have been brought in when it comes to supply of goods. So these rice, when they are supplied, that is when you are selling the rice, which is supply of goods, there is a different rule. That is what I was trying to make out. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Perfect, sir.
Now, for both the side entries, that is AA, which is for outward, and B, which is for inward, the word used is that education institution will be having this exemption. So it is important to first understand what is an education institution, because these entries will apply only when you are an education institution. So we'll first see the definition of education institution and then we'll go back to the entry and the explanation. Please read.
Yes, sir. Education institution means an institution providing services by way of preschool education and education up to higher secondary school or equivalent. Education as part of curriculum for obtaining a qualification recognized by any law for time being in force. Education as part of an approved vocational education course.
So there are three different entities which will be classified as educational institution. First, preschool up to standard 12, because secondary is 10 and higher secondary is 12. So right from playgroup stage, which is preschool, up to the 12th standard, that one is education institution. Then second part covers your colleges, both the senior junior college, because it is that education which is for obtaining a qualification recognized by law. So all these colleges, when you join a commerce or a science or an arts college, they give you firstly the bachelor's qualification and then the master's qualification. That is also what will be covered. And third is you have these IITs, Industrial Training Institutions, ITT, sorry. And you have these different bodies which are created by the government, which are not giving education. They are imparting some skill, which is called as vocational education. So where you are doing some academics, it is education. And where there is some skill impartation, it is vocational education. So all these approved vocational training bodies, approved either by the state or by the central government, for imparting some training, skill training. That is what is covered in the vocational training. So these three, your schools up to 12, then your colleges, both junior, senior, and these approved IITs and all, which are for training or imparting some skill training, all these come under educational institutions. Now, once you understand what is covered in educational institution, now we go to the inward outward entries. Go ahead, Beda.
Entry number 66. Service provided by an educational institution to its students, faculty, and staff. By an educational institution by a conduct of entrance examination against consideration in the form of entrance fees.
Correct. Now, what is the first part? A and AA. It covers the outward supply by an education institution. Now, what is very interesting to note here, what service is given is immaterial. It is not saying education services exempt. In fact, if you see, it is like reading any service provided, though the word any is not used, but if you read, it will mean any service provided. by education institution to the students, faculty, staff. This is where it is distinguished from our very first entry where the trust was giving some education. So if you are an education institution, the actual education, then the accommodation, then the transportation, then the food, any service which is given by you, the only condition it should be given to either your students or your faculty or your other non-teaching staff. That will be fully exempt. So whatever you are charging to the students for the actual education or for the accommodation, etc., will be fully exempt. Now coming to the second part, as you can see, double A, when you read anything which has a number and a clause or a number like double A, AB, it means it was not there originally. It has been added later on. Now, what is the interesting point in this? The interesting point in this is that this was added because of a practical problem. What is that practical problem? Let us understand. So we have all these big MBA and all colleges which conduct some type of entrance examinations. Now, obviously, entrance examinations are covered by the MBA or these colleges, engineering colleges, before you are their student. In fact, on the basis of your score in these entrance exams, I will decide whether or not to give you admission. Now, there was a conflict that whether it will get exempt in clause A. Technically, no. Why? Because the date on which you are giving this entrance exam, you are not my student. You may or may not become my student. Rather, 90% of you will not become my student because I have limited seats. So I have only 200 seats and I have 1 lakh applications, 1 lakh people giving my entrance. In this particular case, the question or the challenge is that whether the fees charged for conduct of these entrance exams would be exempt. So to resolve this, the council decided to add one more entry. So this second entry AA clears this particular point because it has not used the word student. So when such educational institutions are charging you fees for their entrance examinations, which you find commonly in MBA and in all these engineering and medical colleges, so that fees will be fully exempt. And obviously it is charged to non-students because still many of you may not get admission in my college, or even if I'm giving admission, you may not take admission because you got admission in better college. So still AA will cover that. Now A and AA are for the outward side. B is for the inward side, and in inward side they have covered 5 different inward services. So outward side, all services of school colleges exempt, but inward side, only 5 services which are received by school colleges exempt. But interestingly, when you read this part, you will find that there are 3 types of education institution as we saw below. One is up to 12 standard, that is, let us call it as school. Second, that is college, and third is vocational training. So all these are education institutions. Now, interestingly, when we talk about this inward 5 services, all 5 services are not exempt for all the 3 types of education institution. There is some mix and match. So that we can understand with the help of this table as to which inward service is exempt to which type of education institution. See. So there are 5 inward services. These 5 are exempt, but this is school, this is college, and this is the vocational training. Now, what inward services are exempt to whom? That is best understood by this table. So please read column wise. So these are the exempt inward services. There are total 5. But out of these 5, 4 are exempt to schools, 2 are exempt to colleges, and only 1 is exempt to the vocational training. Please read.
Okay, sir. Exemption relating to educational institution providing preschool education and education up to higher secondary school or equivalent.
Let us call them as schools. So for schools, what inward services are exempt? Read.
Yes. Exempt input service. 1. Transportation of students, faculty and staff. 2. Catering, including any midday meal scheme sponsored by the central government, state government, or union territory.
Okay.
Si-
Now see, as a school, I am providing you the transport facility for which I charge you. Now see, this is besides my education. Similarly, nowadays it is a common trend in all big schools. You have the meals which are also provided by the school. Now, when the school is charging to the student for all this, it is fully exempt for the school. But many times the school is not itself providing these services. It is hiring these services from a third party vendor. So let us say it has contracted with a transporter who will be providing the buses and who will be arranging for the transport. So school is charging you for transport fees, that is the bus fees. But what school has done? School has not purchased its own bus and not appointed its own driver. It has subcontracted this to some outside agency. That agency will be providing you the bus and driver. That is, that agency will be providing transport service to the school. So this becomes an inward service. This inward service is exempt in the hands of school. So what the transporter will be charging to school is exempt. That is the inward service for school. And when the school is also charging the same thing to the students, that is also exempt, which is the outward service of the school. Now we are not talking on the outward side, but I'm just trying to connect so that you understand both. So when this outside transporter is charging to the school for the buses, the drivers, the cleaners, etc., it has provided to the school, that inward service for school is exempt. Similarly, the second service is where the school is giving you the food, the meals. Now, some of these meals may be the midday meals as per the schemes provided by the government, or it may be the normal catering. So nowadays, in all major schools, you will have that the afternoon recess will be where the school will be providing. Now, how the school is providing this food? Again, it has hired a caterer. So the caterer will be providing this food to the school. It will be charging to the school, and the school is charging to the students or the staff. Again, this inward service where the caterer is charging to the school is what is exempt over here. Now, interesting to notice that it is not covered in the other two categories. So, where let us say a college is also appointing a transporter for transporting its students. Many times you find this in colleges. So where the transporter is charging to college, it is taxable. Let us say a college is also running or providing food to its students during recess. So the caterer, when it is charging to the college, it is fully taxable. So the inward service of transportation, inward service of catering received by a college, received by a vocational is not exempt. It is exempt only for schools. Go ahead, third and fourth.
Third, security or cleaning or housekeeping services performed in such education institution. 4. Services relating to admission to or conduct of examination by such institution.
Now, in schools, you will commonly find this. You have a security guard, which is very important in schools. Secondly, now for internal housekeeping, earlier they used to uh, keep them on payroll. Now, at many places, you will find in many of the industries also that for housekeeping and all, you have outsourced this work to some housekeeping agency. So, where school is taking these inward services of security from the security agency or for cleaning or housekeeping from these housekeeping agencies, all that which is taken by the school is exempt. Again, the same service taken by college or by vocational training institution is not exempt. Next, services relating to admission or conduct of exams. Now, what is this? Best example is our ICAI. Now, for conducting your exams, ICAI has to hire exam centers for which ICAI pays rent. So, this is an inward service by ICAI. Similarly, it requires paper setters, it requires paper checkers. So, once you understand this, put it in the context of school and college. Same thing school and college does. Okay, they may not require the place for conducting exams because that may be done in their schools, but many times for board exams or for such qualification exams where a neutral place is required, they may be hiring a place also. But more commonly, they always have teachers or they require some external teachers for setting the paper, checking the paper. These are all services relating to conduct of exams. Similarly, services relating to admission is, you will find that nowadays schools work like corporate, where when you visit to the schools, especially during the initial period starting from April to June, that is the admission period, you will have in the school people sitting there to give you a whole demo about the school, about the facilities, about the methodologies, and you have the whole setup where people are there right from the counselor up to the last person who will collect the fees and get your child registered. So all these are services relating to relating to admission. So services taken relating to admission and conduct of exam, this is exempt for schools also, this is exempt for college also, and this is exempt even for the vocational training. So this is the only service which is common in all three, that is relating to admission and conduct of exams, which is for school, college, and vocation. And then one thing which is there for college, but not for school and vocational, that is supply of online educational journals and periodicals. So many times these colleges, like especially the degree colleges, especially in case of science, they require proper journals. Now, like again, in our case, ICAI has student journal. So these journals are to be provided, and nowadays these are all provided online. So for providing this online, the ICAI or these colleges, they have to take inward services from some online portal where all these journals can be provided. So the services taken relating to providing of this online journals, the inward services makes. So these are the 5 different inward services which are exempt, but it is exempt category wise. So out of 5, 4 are exempt for schools, 2 for colleges, and 1 for the vocational training. I hope this is clear to you all. Right, students?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. So I think we can conclude here. Ma'am is also there. So we started with this education part, in which we have covered the first part of the education service, where we have discussed what will be covered in the outward service, what will be covered in the inward service. Now, as you saw, what I've just scrolled up and down, there are some explanatory part relating to both outward and inward as to what are the different types of services which will be covered, which will not be covered. I'll request you all to please read these and come, so that in the next class, we may not have to spend time reading line by line. We can directly have a go through on summary basis and we can proceed. That is all from my side. Over to you, ma'am. Good morning,
Good
ma'am.
evening, students. Good evening, sir. Oh, sorry.
Good
Good
evening.
morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. I'm still in the evening mood, I suppose. So class has been very enriching today, and you have completed place of supply chapter today. Started with exemptions from GST chapter, and very important service we have just covered is educational services. In fact, one important information I want to communicate to all of you is that Sir has been teaching you the latest provisions which are applicable for May 26 and September 26 examination. But study material, you all were finding that that was not available on the website, BOS Knowledge Portal. So study material for final paper 5 is under preparation. But module 1, which you are at present studying, the chapters, they will be very soon web hosted, so that whatever you are studying in the class, that will be available on the website also, and you can refer the latest updated study material which is applicable for May 26 examination. So I hope all of you will be benefited from that. And anybody wants to share any feedback regarding the class? How are you finding these classes? And in fact, I would suggest all of you to provide your feedback at the BOS Knowledge Portal also, because that will help us in understanding that how you are finding these classes. I mean, some ways you want to suggest, you want to improve, get these classes improved, anything you want to highlight that you are liking in the classes, so that we can continue with the same. We always encourage the students to provide the feedback. Any feedback anybody of you wants to share at this point of time, you are most welcome.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am. Firstly, apart from the study material,
Yes, your name, your name.
my name is Swaminathan. Apart from the study material, SAR is giving why this particular section is coming out, what is the reason behind, and also he is referring the Bare Act wherever necessary, and he is providing layman examples. It's understandable in the student way. It's really appreciable. Thank you for that.
That's very good, because you are getting into a habit of reading the Bare Act also, as well as you are understanding the intent of introduction of the provision. That is the best way to learn a provision for any tax law. In fact, for any law particularly, if you know the intent why that provision has been introduced, that makes it very easy for you to memorize or retain those provisions. So that is what sir is doing. So that is, we are happy to know that you are getting benefited. Anyone else wants to share? Otherwise, you can share it through feedback form also. But please do share your feedback. Those of you who are there with us in the YouTube or at BOS Knowledge Portal also, please share your feedback at the BOS Knowledge Portal for the classes. In every class, you share your feedback so that we can understand that yes, what you are actually finding good about the class, what you want to improve about the classes. That will help. That will be benefiting you people only. Okay. So anyone else wants to share anything or any questions, anything you want to ask? Okay. So I think we can wind up the class by this. Okay. Thanks for the watching this session, students. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you. Good day.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, Ashokji. Good day.